Hey everyone, my name is Steven and welcome back to Storytime. Without wasting any time, let's get into our stories of the day. Entitled Karen Chops Down My Tree Costs Her £500,000, $700,000. It's been 2 years and I can finally post about this. This is juicy, so get ready. Background information. We live in an old and big manor that has been split into 3 attached houses. The houses are about 150 years old and were built around 5 huge giant sequoias, which were about 200 years old. In the UK, giant sequoias are very rare and the 2 in our garden upped the house price by about £60,000. We live next to 2 really nice neighbors, 1 young couple and 1 old couple. The story. Unfortunately, our old neighbors passed away, so their child and her family moved in. Let's call her Jo. Jo was instantly a pain in the butt. We had been sharing chickens with the previous neighbors, and Jo agreed to keep sharing them. However, on her nights, she would constantly forget to put them away, so we would have to check on them every night anyway. One night, her little brats thought it would be funny to open our personal duck pen in the night, which leads to a mass slaughter. Later, the chickens went the same way. About 2 years ago, there was a storm and one of her sequoias somehow fell over and died. They were distraught, understandably, but from then on, the jealousy started. She would constantly complain about how lucky we were to have 2 sequoias in our garden and how our sequoia was making too much shade in their garden. It wasn't. Anyway, we just thought it was Jo being a pain. There were a few dry threats like they will chop it down or maybe the next storm will blow it down. Until we came back from a holiday to France to find a huge 6-meter stump and nothing else. I mean, how the freak do you get rid of a 100-foot tree in like 2 weeks? 2 of our old British oak trees had been crushed as well. My mom and sisters were crying, my dad was red in the face, and we had no evidence Jo had done it. She claimed that there had been a storm and she had to get rid of it. We had a security camera at the front of the house, but you can get in the back if you go through a few fields. We then were given a £8,000 bill for damages to her property, and to have the tree chopped up and removed. The wood alone would have been worth a small fortune. We had lost all hope and 2 weeks had passed when my dad came running in from the garden. We had put up a wildlife camera a few months ago and had caught everything. We got a lawyer on the phone and started our revenge. We got a tree surgeon out who said it was an original specimen brought into the UK in 1860, along with the 2 that were in the Elveston Castle Country Park. There were 218 around the UK, but only 60 now. He also told us to call out an engineer because the roots might be in the foundation, so when they rot, it could damage the house. Turns out we would need to redo the foundations. Then we took Jo to court and sued them for damage to property, trespassing, and lots of other smaller claims. The tree would cost $250,000 to have another sequoia that was 200 years put in and looked after. It's basically impossible. Plus the damage to the foundation, which was $200K, and the 2 oaks, which were another $25K. So with the smaller claims, it went to about £500,000, $700,000. They had to move out. And we have now paid off the mortgage, done a lovely loft and kitchen conversion, and have basically done up the house and garden as well as plant a 60-year-old sequoia tree in the back garden. We also had our kitchen counter and table made from the old sequoia. We now have a new lovely family living next to us who we share chickens, ducks, and pygmy goats with. They're very nice and I make a fortune babysitting their kids. Sorry for the essay. Edit. Many of you wanted to hear about the court case, but she didn't stand a chance. And as soon as we revealed the footage to her and her lawyer, she gave up. The people who cut the tree down gave us the countertops for free as a sorry. They were truly sorry. The neighbors had a second home, so they just sold the house and moved back to their smaller one. We feel bad for the old neighbors, but we do visit their graves because they were like family. I can't show the footage of the wildlife cam, sorry. Oh my gosh. Personally, I would be furious. My question for you guys is, upon the discovery of the wildlife camera catching everything, how would you react, what would you do, and what would you say? Let me know how you would react in the comments below. Pastor lies, cheats, and steals. He gets exactly what he deserves. The cast: Pastor Bob, not real name; Contractor, me, Caldra, or OP if you want. Setup. I have been a computer technician for more than 15 years. I have worked on all kinds of computers. Everything from tiny point-of-sale computers to large rack server computers. I had been attending a new-to-me church. I was trying to date a woman there. This church was her idea. That relationship crashed and burned, but that's a different story. Now we can start. It was about 5 years ago. I had just sat through a long sermon about generosity and giving to those that need help. At the end of the sermon, Pastor Bob asked for an additional donation because the church's roof needed repairs, and it would cost $20,000 US. That's right, 20,000 freedom dollars for a new roof. After the service, I'm talking to my date. Pastor Bob walks over to me. I said hi and he introduced himself. We talk a bit. Pastor Bob asks what I do for a living. I tell him I'm a computer tech with a shop. As I'm telling him, I have a feeling he already knows what I do. Pastor Bob asks me to have a look at his laptop. It's being very slow, so I agree. I turn the laptop on and I hear a clicking noise. This clues me in it's probably the hard drive, but I can still access the data. This is a good thing because it means I can probably recover the data. So I tell Pastor Bob the hard drive is dying and it needs to be replaced. I also tell him I can probably recover the data. Pastor Bob asked how much it would cost to fix. I tell him for most people I would charge around $250. However, I feel I can donate my time, so I would just need $60 for a new hard drive. Pastor Bob agrees, so I write up an invoice. New hard drive, $60, labor, 0, data recovery, 0, and 2 to 4 days for repair. Pastor Bob signed the invoice. Thus, I take the laptop to my shop. I open the laptop. HP, why do you use so many screws and clips? I get the hard drive out and connect it to my recovery rig. I set up the recovery to clone the data to a new hard drive, but not the new one for the laptop, a high-end storage drive. I go home after locking up the shop. Next Monday, I open the shop and check the recovery rig. It's working, but it will take at least 10 more hours. So I start working on other tickets. Then at closing time, I lock up and go home. Next day, Tuesday, I've had Pastor Bob's laptop for 2 days. I open the shop and check my recovery rig. Good news, recovery completed, 100% data recovered. Report says hard drive developed too many bad sectors. Now I have a choice to make. I could put a 1TB hard drive $60, or I could pay money myself for a 240GB SSD $100. I decide why not and put the 240GB SSD in the laptop. I then clone all the data over from the new recovery storage drive to the new 240GB SSD. An hour later, the clone is done. So I check everything. The laptop works great and is exactly like how it was before the first hard drive died. Even the login still worked. Therefore, I call Pastor Bob and tell him his computer is done. He says that's great, he will be here soon to get it. About 45 minutes later, Pastor Bob walks in. I show him his laptop working and much faster. He loves it and signs the pickup form. He then pays me with a check for $60. It's important he paid me with a check. I do a bank run on Monday and Friday. So that Friday at the bank, I am informed that Pastor Bob's check is void. What? Why? Pastor Bob had placed a stop payment on the check. Consequently, I called him and he ignored my call. I go to church on Sunday. Pastor Bob gives a sermon about not lying. I walk up to him and he avoids me. So I leave and decide I'm going to write it off. I spent $100 and some time to do something nice. A few weeks later, a customer walks in looking for a new computer. To welcome him, I offer him a drink and go over his options. I'm chatting him up and he tells me he is a contractor, he mostly does siding and roofing. He is thinking about offering solar. That's why he's getting a new computer. I ask him how much does a new roof cost. He says up to about $10,000. So I ask him why someone would say $20,000. He had no idea. I thought it was strange. I asked about the church. Contractor said it would have been simple and around $5,000, and he could probably do it for less. Contractor buys a nice new laptop. Sorry the setup took so long, the revenge starts now. Something about what the contractor said bugs me later. Why would Pastor Bob lie and say $20,000 for a new roof? And why would he stiff me for $60? I then remember I never cleared the recovery rig storage drive. I check and there it is, Pastor Bob's laptop data. I look around, it's slow and I'm all caught up on repair tickets. Fittingly, I look around a bit. He had all of his logins stored in a folder on the desktop, including his online dating logins and online poker. Did I ever mention Pastor Bob is married? I start printing his online dating messages. I look back and find Pastor Bob had been adult hugging several women from his online dating. He had been paying for his dates from the church's donation fund. I am getting angry now. Then I realized he had adult hugged the woman I was dating when I was dating her. It was then I decided to break Pastor Bob. I printed out all his dating messages and the woman he adult hugged for the last 6 months, except I refused to print the naughty pictures. It was an impressive packet. I then decide I need copies of the packet. Therefore, I order 100 packets printed from a major online printer. A few days later, my order of revenge packets arrived. These revenge packets are amazing, double-sided, staple-bound with a cover with Pastor Bob's face on it. Now the conclusion, and I think it's worth it. This church had a calendar of what the sermon might be about. A perfect Sunday was approaching. I go to church that perfect Sunday. I show up a bit late. Everyone is in the church, so I put a revenge packet on each car. I have a few revenge packets that are in yellow envelopes. Fittingly, I put them in the mail. I sent one to all the high-ups in the church, and I sent a special packet with some of Pastor Bob's naughty pics to Pastor Bob's wife. I sent the return address to the church. I also emailed a bunch of people the revenge packet from a burner email. A couple weeks after I went back to that church, Pastor Bob was gone, so was the wife. Several of the women were also gone, including the one I was dating. I asked one of the important people there, what happened? The answer was amazing. I was told about the revenge packet and how everyone had gotten one. The day my revenge packet appeared, the sermon Pastor Bob had given was about the evils of adultery and cheating on your wife. Thank you, church calendar. The fallout. Pastor Bob was fired and shunned. Multiple women from the church have not returned, including the one I was dating. Pastor Bob's wife is divorcing him, and she is the one that owned the house and cars. Pastor Bob is now being sued by several people, including the one that fixed the roof. There were also rumors of a criminal case for embezzlement. No one has seen Bob in a while now. The church might close if they can't find a new pastor, but the church's money is very low. Apparently, he also spent over $30,000 on online gambling. Man, when I thought it would be hard to top the Sequoia story, this story comes out of the woodworks and is just as powerful. The real incredibly tough question for you guys today is which of these two stories are your personal favorite and why? Let me know which of these two captured your attention and thoughts the most in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can get notified of when all of the upcoming videos release. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.